The white wire is for your fuel tank level sender, but it is also for the engine stop signal. It's also for communication data on a digital application. So what you are working on plays a vital part in what the wire color is going to mean. So I encourage you to watch the whole video and I'll give you context with each color. Starting with an analog system on the boat side of things, if you look on the back of the speed gauge, you'll have what we'll call the core 4 colors. Even though there's really 5 core colors, but nothing rhymes with 5, so oh well. The black wire is our ground. The red wire is a constant 12 volt power wire or battery voltage that comes from the engine. The yellow is key on 12 volt power, which only gets its 12 volts when the key switch is turned on. And the blue wire, which is just 12 volt power that is available to use for your dash lights. The white wire on the back of the gauge though, this is for the fuel sender. And you will hook up the pink wire that comes from your fuel tank sender to this for the fuel tank level. All these wires will hook into another harness that will connect all of your gauges together. This harness adds a green wire, which is going to be that tach signal wire or the lighting coil output wire, which will only attach to the tachometer, which also has our blue for the lights, yellow key on power, and black for the ground. And it has these 2 plugs here, which are for the trim and the oil systems, which are signal wires that come from the engine. Just like for the white wire that goes into the speed, you'll notice a black wire with a white stripe here. This color really doesn't mean anything because it is on a component. You'll notice a lot of components will have different colors for wires on them, which is where it gets confusing for a lot of people. Also, it's not uncommon for a wire that has a stripe like this black with a white stripe. The stripe is signifying that the wire color has been changed. Not sure why the white fuel wire doesn't get a stripe, but hey, that's why it's confusing. This wire is basically just a ground. The gray wire is for the overheat alarm, and the pink wire here is for the trim signal. Then the orange wire doesn't mean anything because it is not used. All of this stuff is gauge related and they all come from the key switch. And all of these colors are going to be gauge related and they all come from the key switch, which is controlled from our 10-pin harness. Inside of the 10-pin, we're going to have some changes. You already know the black ground, the red 12 volt constant power, the yellow key on power, but here the blue wire is going to change. We aren't talking about gauges, so in this harness, the dark blue wire is for the choke solenoid, so when you push your key switch in, it's your choke. And the white wire here is going to be for that engine stop signal. So when you turn the keys to the off position, this is what turns the engine off. Dark green is the tach signal, pink is for the warning horn or buzzer or audible alarm as opposed to the trim signal like it was earlier, and brown is for the start solenoid, which activates the starter when you turn the key to the start position, and our light green is for activating the trim motor down, whereas our light blue is going to activate the trim motor up. Think of blue skies and green grass. The sky is blue and up, and the grass is green and down. Then some harnesses can come with a purple wire, and that is for the oil control valve if you have that. Now these are all pretty much standard for all of Yamaha stuff. But before talking about the engine harness, this is all analog. And you will notice when talking about digital stuff, like on our 16-pin, all of these colors are different. Some of them are going to be the same, like yellow is still key on power, red is still 12 volts, black is still ground, brown is still going to be start, and one of these whites is still going to be the engine stop signal. But now we've got more blues and more whites, which some will have stripes or marks on them, like this white has a gray band on it. But when we get into talking about digital applications, a lot of it is just a CAN network where it's a communication type situation, and you will need to use a pinout diagram to diagnose stuff. So wire color is not going to be as important here, and you'll be hard pressed to be able to remember what each of these wires do and where they go. But we are only trying to talk about wire colors right now, so let's move back to the engine since you've got a gist of what's going on with these colors from the dash through the main harness. Yamahas are pretty nice though because they are pretty consistent with their colors most of the time. Some of the 2-stroke stuff can vary a little in the color, but for the most part, all the 4-stroke stuff is going to be very similar when it comes to some of the parts and the colors for the wires. Black is still going to be ground, and red is still going to be 12 volt constant battery voltage, but you will also see reds with a yellow stripe. These are also going to be a 12 volt constant power, but only when the key switch is in the on position or the engine is running. This is going to be what powers a lot of the 12 volt components on the engine, like the fuel pump, the ignition coils, the fuel injectors, and pretty much all of the 12-volt stuff. But there can also be 12-volt components that will have another color for its 12-volt source. Let's take the fuel injectors and ignition coils for example. The injector wire colors as the ignition coil colors for basically all of the 4-strokes and most of the 2-strokes all have the same colors going to the same component. Injectors will always have a purple wire with a colored stripe, and coils will always have a black wire with a colored stripe. The number 1 fuel injector will always be purple with a red stripe. Number 2 injector will always be a purple black, and number 3 purple yellow, number 4 purple green, number 5 purple blue, number 6 purple white, number 7 purple red, and number 8 purple black, which is the same as number 2 cylinder, but I guess they ran out of colors. These will all be the signaling wire from the ECU, but the actual 12 volts for the actual injector, though it's usually red with a yellow stripe, there are some models, like some of the HPDIs, that will have an orange wire with a colored stripe that matches the injector's signal wire color, which supplies that 12 volts. Again, this is most of the models, because when it comes to the XTOs, they decided to throw all of their consistency right out the window for reasons that are probably above our understanding. These are going to be red and black and green and black, and none of them match the coils they go to, so you'll need to learn to read the schematics when it comes to the larger, more complicated color coding, because they are all going to be different when talking about this engine model. Now, when it comes to the ignition coils, it's very similar, depending on the type of coil it is, whether that's a coilover plug or cop coil, or a Siamese coil, or a transistor controlled coil. The colors are all pretty consistent. Red and yellow provides the 12 volts to the coil, and then we have a similar pattern of black and orange for number 1. Number 2 is going to be black and white. Number 3, black yellow. Number 4, black green. Number 5, black blue. Number 6, black brown. Number 7, black orange, and number 8, black white. Again, this is pretty consistent until you get to the XTO, which is then completely different. But that color code usually holds pretty true for the signal wire for the coils across pretty much all the rest of their other models. Now, just to throw a curveball in here though, they doubled down with using the black and yellow color for most of the temperature sensors. So the engine temp sensor, the intake air temp, they will also use that black and yellow color as well. Just have that in mind. The next consistent color that you will want to know about is going to be the orange wire. This wire is going to be vitally important for you to know and understand, because this is going to be the sensor 5-volt reference power. For most of the sensors on the engine, like the air pressure sensor, the oil pressure sensor, the throttle position sensor, they all get a 5-volt reference to allow the sensor to operate properly, and they all share the same 5 volts from this orange wire. But for any other color, you're going to need to get out the wiring diagram and just follow the wire if you're trying to figure something else out.